Showery rain across the UK, blustery winds. Temperatures mild for January, but feeling colder than the thermometer suggests. That is the picture this afternoon. I've been examining the latest data from the Met Office, and whilst conditions today are unsettled, they are not particularly unusual for this time of year. What we are seeing is a fairly typical Atlantic weather pattern for mid-January. Let me walk you through what is happening and what to expect over the coming days. Right now, bands of showery rain have been pushing northwards throughout the afternoon. If you were out early this morning in some regions, you might have enjoyed a reasonably bright start. That changed from late morning onwards as the rain moved in. It's been continuing through the afternoon period and looks set to persist into this evening. The contrast across the country is notable. Here in London, temperatures are sitting around 10 to 11 degrees Celsius this afternoon. That is actually quite mild for the 21st of January, slightly above the seasonal average. Overnight lows will drop to around 8 degrees. Compare that to other major cities further north. Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds are seeing temperatures of around 6 degrees. Liverpool is a touch warmer at 7 to 8 degrees. Scotland is rather chillier, with temperatures ranging from 6 to 8 degrees across most areas. Now, in Scotland, particularly across the higher ground, we were not just seeing rain. There's snow as well. The southeast of Scotland has experienced rather persistent and heavy rainfall. This looks set to continue into this evening and potentially overnight. The Met Office has the precipitation totals, and they read significant for these areas. The wind is certainly a feature worth discussing. Strong winds are affecting most regions today. If you are in coastal areas, you experiencing gales in places. Average wind speeds are running around 19 kilometers per hour, but gusts are considerably higher, particularly along exposed coastlines and over higher ground. That wind is making it feel rather colder than the actual temperature would suggest. When you factor in the wind chill, it is feeling more like 4 or 5 degrees in many areas, rather than the 8 to 10 degrees showing on the thermometer. Humidity levels are quite high today. We're resitting between 83 and 85% across most of the UK. Combined with the rainfall, that is contributing to a rather damp and uncomfortable feel. It's that penetrating dampness that gets into your bones, as many of you will know. In terms of visibility and sunshine, with the thick cloud cover and persistent rain, we are seeing very little in the way of sunshine this afternoon. That's fairly typical for January in the UK. On average, London sees only about 2 hours of bright sunshine per day during this month. That is just 19% of daylight hours. Other parts of the country fare even worse. It is why January often feels so dreary, particularly after the Christmas period. Let me turn to the meteorological setup here. What we are dealing with is a series of Atlantic low-pressure systems moving across the UK. These aren't particularly deep lows, but they bringing moisture-laden air from the Atlantic, which is why we're seeing these bands of showery rain. The pressure gradient is fairly tight, which explains the blustery winds we're experiencing. The jet stream is positioned to our north at the moment, which is why we in this mild, unsettled westerly flow. We're not seeing any significant cold air being dragged down from the Arctic. That Atlantic air mass is relatively mild for this time of year, which is why temperatures in the south are running above average. Looking at tonight's forecast, we're expecting continued cloudy and breezy conditions. Those showery outbreaks of rain will persist across many areas. The heaviest and most persistent rain will remain across southeast Scotland, where accumulations could become significant. We were looking at totals that could reach 20 to 30 millimetres in some spots by tomorrow morning. Temperatures tonight won't fall very far. Lows will be around 7 to 9 degrees across much of England and Wales, perhaps dropping to 5 or 6 degrees across parts of Scotland. That's mild for a January night. The cloud cover and wind will prevent temperatures from dropping much further. For those of you in the southeast of Scotland dealing with the persistent rain, do keep an eye on local flood warnings. The Environment Agency for England and SEPA for Scotland have the latest information. With the ground already saturated from recent rainfall, there's limited capacity for the soil to absorb more water. Small streams and rivers could respond fairly quickly. Moving into tomorrow, Wednesday, the 22nd of January, the pattern doesn't change dramatically. We're relooking at more of the same, really. Showery outbreaks will continue, though they might become a bit more scattered as we go through the day. The winds will remain blustery, though perhaps not quite as strong as today. Temperatures will be similar to today's values, 10 to 11 degrees in London and the southeast, 6 to 8 degrees further north. The ECMWF model and the UKMO model are in fairly good agreement for the next 48 hours. Both show this unsettled westerly flow continuing. The GFS model is slightly different in the details, placing the showers in marginally different locations, but the overall pattern is consistent across all the models. Thursday looks similar again. More cloud, more showers, breezy conditions, temperatures holding steady. I know that not particularly exciting for weather enthusiasts. but it's honest. This is what January typically looks like in the UK. Grey, damp, and breezy. We're not looking at any significant cold air or major snow events in the immediate future. Friday brings a slight change. The showers should start to ease off a bit as a weak ridge of high pressure tries to build in from the west. I say tries to build in because it's not a particularly strong feature, but it might give some areas a drier day, perhaps even a few brighter spells. Don-T expect wall-to-wall sunshine, but you might see some breaks in the cloud. Temperatures will remain similar, around 6 to 10 degrees, depending on location. Looking further ahead to the weekend, and this is where the forecast becomes a bit less certain. The models are showing another area of low pressure approaching from the Atlantic. This one looks like it might be a bit more significant than what we've been dealing with this week. It could bring a spell of more persistent and heavier rain along with stronger winds. The timing is still a bit uncertain. Some models bring it in on Saturday, others on Sunday. The track is also not entirely clear yet. If it tracks further north, Scotland and Northern Ireland will see the worst of it. If it tracks further south, Wales and Northern England could be in line for some rather unpleasant conditions. Wind speeds associated with this system could reach 40 to 50 miles per hour quite widely, with gusts potentially reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour in exposed locations. That's worth keeping an eye on, particularly if you have outdoor plans for the weekend. Rainfall totals could be significant as well. We're potentially looking at 20 to 40 millimetres quite widely, with some higher totals possible over high ground in Wales and the Lake District. Given that the ground is already saturated, this could lead to some localised flooding issues. I'll be monitoring the model runs closely over the next couple of days to see how this system develops. As we get closer to the weekend, the forecast will become clearer. Now, let's talk about what you should be doing to prepare for these conditions. The Met Office advice is sound. Wrap up warm with several layers when you're heading out. Layers trap air, which acts as insulation. It's more effective than one thick coat. Carry waterproofs or an umbrella. I know that sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people get caught out. If you are driving, be aware that the roads will be wet. Spray from other vehicles will reduce visibility. Give yourself extra time for journeys. There's no point rushing in these conditions. The wind can affect high-sided vehicles, particularly on exposed roads and bridges. If you are driving a van, caravan, or lorry, take extra care. For those in Scotland dealing with the persistent rain and potential snow on higher ground, be aware that conditions can deteriorate quickly in the hills. If you're replanning any walks or outdoor activities, check the conditions before you set out. The snow line is fluctuating, which can make conditions unpredictable. For the elderly or those with health conditions, these damp, cold conditions can be challenging. Make sure heating is adequate. Check on elderly neighbours if you can. The combination of dampness and wind makes it feel colder than it actually is, and that can catch people out. In your garden, if you have any loose items, secure them. With these blustery winds continuing over the next few days, things like garden furniture, bins, or plant pots can get blown about. It's better to secure them now than to find them in your neighbour's garden tomorrow morning. If you're in an area prone to flooding, particularly in southeast Scotland or parts of northern England, keep an eye on local warnings. The Environment Agency and SEPA websites have real-time information. If you've been flooded before, you know the drill. Move valuable items upstairs if possible. Have sandbags ready if you have them. For those who need to be out and about, the conditions aren't dangerous, just unpleasant. A good waterproof jacket, decent footwear, and a bit of common sense will see you through. These are normal January conditions for the UK. Let me address something that's worth mentioning. This weather pattern, whilst unsettled, is not unprecedented. It is not a major weather event. It's winter in the UK. We get rain, we get wind, temperatures fluctuate. If you've lived here for any length of time, you've seen all this before. Some of you will remember far more significant weather events. The Great Storm of October 1987. That was a genuine event. Gusts exceeding 120 miles per hour in some locations. 18 people lost their lives. Millions of trees were felled. What we're re-experiencing now doesn't come close to that. The Burns Day storm of January 1990. Gusts reached 107 miles per hour, 47 deaths across the UK. That was a significant storm. More recently, the beast from the east in February and March 2018. Siberian air brought temperatures down to minus 14 Celsius in some areas. Significant snowfall across much of the country. That was proper cold weather. The current situation doesn't warrant that level of concern. It's unsettled, it is unpleasant, but it's not severe. I say this not to downplay the conditions, but to give some perspective. This is manageable January weather. That said, don't be complacent. The blustery winds can still cause problems. The persistent rain in Scotland could lead to localised flooding. The combination of wind and rain makes outdoor activities less pleasant and potentially more hazardous. So be sensible, be prepared, but don't panic. Looking at the longer range beyond the weekend, the pattern looks set to remain unsettled. We are likely to stay in this Atlantic westerly flow for at least another week, possibly longer. That means more of the same, really. Temperatures near or slightly above average for the time of year. Periods of rain interspersed with brighter, showery conditions. Breezy or windy at times, there's no sign of any significant cold outbreak in the medium term. The jet stream position doesn't favor it. We do need to see a pattern change, with high pressure building to our north or east, to drag down colder air from Scandinavia or the Arctic. The models aren't showing that at the moment. For those in East Anglia and parts of the southeast who might be hoping for some winter snow, it's not looking likely in the immediate future. The Atlantic air mass is just too mild. Snow requires cold air, and we're not getting it. The Scottish Highlands will continue to see snow on the higher ground, but that is normal for them at this time of year. January in the UK typically brings challenging weather. High rainfall totals and limited sunshine are the norm. This month, we are averaging about 100 millimetres of rainfall across the UK. Some areas will see more, some less, but it's generally a wet month. And with only about 15% of daylight hours seeing sunshine on average, it is grey and gloomy. That is just the reality of our climate at this time of year. The days are short, the sun is weak even when it does appear, and Atlantic weather systems dominate. It's why so many people find January and February the most difficult months. But spring isn't too far away. By late February, early March, we start to see a shift. The days lengthen noticeably, the sun gains strength, and weather patterns begin to change. For now, though, we are firmly in winter, and winter in the UK means rain, wind, and grey skies more often than not. Before I finish, let me give you the key points to remember. Showery rain continues today and tonight, heaviest across southeast Scotland. Blustery winds making it feel colder than the actual temperature. Conditions tomorrow and Thursday similar, before a slight improvement on Friday. Weekend potentially more unsettled, with a deeper low pressure system bringing heavier rain and stronger winds. Keep an eye on the forecast updates for that. Temperatures remaining mild for the time of year, generally between 6 and 11 degrees Celsius, though feeling colder in the wind, no significant cold air or snow for most areas in the immediate future. The pattern remains Atlantic dominated and unsettled. Practical advice: wrap up warm, carry waterproofs, allow extra time for travel, secure loose items in the garden, and check on vulnerable neighbours. If you are in flood-prone areas, monitor local warnings. This weather pattern is manageable with common sense and preparation. It's unpleasant, certainly, but it's not severe. You've dealt with worse, and you'll deal with this just fine. That's the weather situation as it stands. I'll continue to monitor the models, particularly for that weekend system, and provide updates as the forecast becomes clearer. Stay safe, stay dry, and